She had taught for 19 years, long enough to know when a classroom carried tension that could break like glass, long enough to read the fear behind bravado and the pain behind rebellion. Yet that morning felt different from anything she had handled before, as a fight broke out in the far corner of her 8th grade classroom with desks scraping, shouts rising, and 2 boys crashing into a wall while the rest of the class froze in stunned silence, until she stepped between them with a calmness she did not feel, placing a hand on each chest, pushing them apart with quiet authority that slowly dissolved their fury into heavy breathing and lowered eyes. And while the room simmered with anger and shame, she felt something whisper through her spirit, calling her not to lecture, not to punish, but to still the air itself. So she drew a long, steady breath and asked all 27 students to sit, close their eyes if they wished, rest their hands on their desks, and give her 1 minute of complete silence, not as a punishment, but as a moment to breathe, to let whatever heaviness each carried fall at the feet of the one who held them, even when they did not notice. And she told them they could pray if they wanted, or simply be still, or simply listen for something deeper than the noise of their days. And the room that had been roaring with conflict just seconds before now folded into a quiet so profound she felt her heartbeat echo through the floor. For a long moment she watched them, the restless feet slowing, the slumped shoulders softening, the clenched jaws easing. And she saw even the toughest boy in the class, Marcus, the one whose file overflowed with suspensions, missed assignments, and home crises no child should carry, shift in his seat with discomfort, like silence was a foreign language he had never learned. But then something in him cracked open as his chin trembled, his shoulders shook, and tears he had guarded for years slid down his face as though they had been waiting for this single minute of stillness, this fragile permission to be human. And before she could speak, he stood, walked to the front of the class with trembling hands, and looked at the boy he had just fought with, whispering an apology so raw it broke the room all over again. And the other boy, equally shaken, accepted it with a quiet nod that felt heavier than any speech could have been. And in that instant the classroom seemed filled with a peace that was not of this world, settling over them like warm sunlight through a winter window. She wanted to speak encouragement, but the words caught in her throat as Marcus turned to the entire room and confessed in a wavering voice that he had been angry for months, angry at his father for leaving, angry at himself for not being good enough, angry at everyone who tried to help him, and that for the first time in a long time he had felt something when the room went silent, something he could not name but needed more of. And he asked if anyone would join him during lunch to try that silence again, maybe with prayer if anyone wanted, maybe with nothing but listening for the presence he felt. And the room, still holding its breath, slowly filled with raised hands as one by one students volunteered, surprising even themselves with how much they longed for the quiet that had held them so gently. When the bell rang, no one moved, as if leaving would break the delicate peace between them. But finally they gathered their things and walked into the hallway, not with their usual noise, but with a strange tenderness in the way they stepped around each other. And during the next period she stepped into the hallway and saw Marcus standing at his locker with 2 classmates who had never spoken to him before, all 3 of them talking softly, and she felt tears push against her own eyes as she remembered the whisper in her spirit that morning, the unexpected call to stillness that she had almost ignored because it felt too simple, too unstructured, too small to change anything. Yet it had changed everything. When lunch arrived, she walked past the cafeteria, intending only to observe from a distance. But she froze when she saw more than a dozen students sitting in a circle on the floor, eyes closed, hands loosely in their laps, the noise of the cafeteria dimming around them like a protective barrier. And Marcus sat in the center with a look of peace she had never seen on his face, even offering a small smile when he noticed her watching. And he mouthed the words "thank you," though she had barely done anything except Obey, a quiet prompting that had felt like a breath from heaven. She stepped back to her classroom, heart pounding with a mixture of gratitude and awe. And she remembered moments earlier that year when she had begged God for direction because the weight of adolescence and broken homes and overcrowded classrooms had worn down the edges of her hope. And she realized that God had answered not with big signs or booming announcements, but with a gentle invitation to pause. A whisper that carried more power than any discipline policy or conflict resolution plan. And she felt humbled by how easily she forgot that the smallest act of faith could open the largest door. Word of the lunchtime circle spread quickly. By the end of the week, students from other classes joined, some sitting quietly, some whispering prayers under their breath, some simply breathing more deeply than they had in months. And teachers peered through the cafeteria windows with curiosity at first, then respect, then admiration as they realized something was shifting among the students. A gentleness replacing the usual tension, a unity growing where division had flourished. And she watched all this unfold with the quiet recognition that this was not her accomplishment, but God's grace touching the broken places of young hearts. One afternoon, just as she was about to leave for the day, Marcus knocked on her door, holding a small crumpled notebook. And he asked her if she would read the words he had written after their minute of silence earlier that week. And she opened the notebook to find a single sentence repeated over and over in his uneven handwriting. God heard me, and I heard him, and I don't want to stop listening. And tears blurred the page as she realized that this boy, who had once met every adult with defiance and every challenge with fists, had encountered something holy in the quiet. And it had begun to remake him from the inside out. She thanked him, closed the notebook gently, and told him she believed God had given him a gift, a soft heart beneath a hard story, and that the world needed people who were brave enough to listen when everything else begged them to shout. And he nodded with a maturity that felt far older than his years, then asked if she thought their circle could pray for students who were struggling, even if those students never joined. And she said yes, of course, because prayer was not bound by attendance or proximity. And his face lit with a hope so bright it seemed to warm the doorway. Weeks passed, and the lunchtime circle grew until it filled nearly half the cafeteria. Each day beginning with 1 minute of silence that became their sacred tradition. A moment when chaos paused and their hearts aligned with something greater than themselves. And students who had once avoided each other began offering encouragement, helping with homework, sitting beside classmates who usually ate alone. And the entire school began to feel lighter, as though that first minute had opened a window that allowed light to move freely through the halls. One Friday morning, the principal asked her to step into his office, and she braced herself, expecting concerns about prayer in school. But instead he closed the door, sat heavily at his desk, and told her that for the first time in years, he had received more notes of gratitude from parents than disciplinary complaints from teachers. And he wanted to know how she had managed to shift the school climate with nothing but silence. And she smiled softly and said it wasn't her. It was God speaking into the quiet when they finally invited silence to make space for him. And the principal leaned back, nodding slowly, overwhelmed by the realization that something profound had taken root in the school. Months later, on the last day before summer break, Marcus approached her with a card he had made from notebook paper. The edges uneven, the writing crooked, and inside he had written that the minute she invited the class into silence was the minute he felt seen by someone he could not see, that he had forgiven his father, apologized to his mother, and asked God to shape him into someone who could help others feel the peace he had found. And he told her he wanted to start a prayer circle at his new high school in the fall, carrying the quiet with him like a light no darkness could take. As she hugged him goodbye and watched him walk down the hallway, taller somehow, steadier somehow, she whispered thank you to the God who had guided her that tumultuous morning, who had met her in her exhaustion and used her trembling obedience to change the trajectory of a boy's life. a classroom's culture, and perhaps someday, a school far beyond her reach. And she closed her classroom door with gratitude swelling in her chest, knowing she would never again underestimate the power of one moment of holy silence. Welcome, dear friend. This is Faith Light Stories, where every story reminds us that God never leaves us. Please like, share, and subscribe. And if this story moved your heart, leave a comment below about a moment when God met you in the quiet. Your words may be the spark that brings hope to someone who desperately needs it today.